Hi, my name's Sam. I'm the head brewer here at Lawrence Beer Company. Today we're going to talk about King Hippo, our double IPA. This is a double IPA or imperial IPA, meaning a bigger version of an IPA, so more alcohol, but also more hop flavor and more aroma. So this beer is 8% heavily hopped with really dynamic flavors. So we'll kind of talk about our brewing process and how that adds to those flavors and also the specific ingredients that we use in this beer. On the ingredient side, we're using two hops, Azzacca and Idaho 7. They're both newer varieties, really dynamic hops. My favorite hop right now is Idaho 7. I really fell in love with that hop. I think it's really amazing. In this beer, the Idaho 7 gives a lot of flavors of really strong white peach and a lot of heavy berry flavors, and they just jump out of the glass. So we have these two amazing hops. How do we try to get those hops to be as flavorful as possible in the finished beer? One, we're gonna backload our hopping in the boil. We're gonna add all the hops in the whirlpool. We're not gonna boil the hops at all. The more you boil the hops, the more you add bitterness, which we don't exactly want in this beer. We also in this beer employ a technique called a biotransformation hop. And that's a newer thing that brewers are starting to do. They're adding hops at the beginning of fermentation as well. So we're adding hops in the boil, during the whirlpool. We're adding hops at the beginning of fermentation. There's this biotransformation or interaction that happens with yeast while they're fermenting and hops that create really amazing aromas and flavors. And then we're also double dry hopping this beer at the end of fermentation to make those hop flavors and aromas even more intense. So this beer is really tropical, a lot of pineapple and mango jumping out of the glass. And then on the malt side, what we're doing to accentuate those flavors is we're softening the mouthfeel. We add about 25% of the malt bill in this beer is flaked oats. That's gonna create a really soft, chewy mouthfeel, really like a pillow that the hops can ride upon. The other thing that we're doing with this beer is we're not using our house California ale yeast. We're using Conan yeast, which is a more expressive yeast, and it doesn't attenuate as much, or meaning it doesn't consume as much sugar. So there's a slightly higher sugar content in this beer, again adding to the mouthfeel. So we do all of these techniques to try to create as aromatic of a beer as possible. The other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna manipulate our water profile. We're actually gonna soften the water for this beer. Traditionally, brewers will add gypsum, or calcium sulfate to the beer to create a bit of a sharper edge to the beer, which actually accentuates hop flavor. But brewers now are starting to go in the other direction. I softened the mouthfeel of this beer with calcium chloride. That's going to create a chewier, softer mouthfeel, and that paired with the lower attenuating yeast, more sugar in the beer, along with all of the oats, create this really pillowy, soft mouthfeel, and then with all of the hops that we added, having all these fruity flavors, it creates a double IPA that doesn't have an alcohol burn, it doesn't have a sharp bitterness, it's really, really juicy and has a really soft, well-rounded mouthfeel. The last thing to note about the style, this is a double IPA, meaning it's a bigger version of an IPA. Intuitively, that means, of course, higher alcohol content. But one thing that the higher alcohol content does is it requires you to add more malt, which gives the beer a bigger malt base, a bigger foundation, along with a bigger alcohol backbone. And that allows you to add even more hops to the beer. If we added the same amount of hops that are in this beer to a standard IPA or a pale ale, it would really be almost undrinkable. Unbearably bitter, unbalanced, the hop flavors wouldn't come through. So it's partly because it's a double IPA, because it's bigger, because there's more alcohol and more of a malt backbone, it allows us to really push the hopping limits, and that in turn gives a really aromatic, really flavorful double IPA.